What is up, guys, and welcome to another video. The hype is just reaching its maximum right now, which is just the most appropriate word for Broly. We are getting clips almost every day now, and we've just gotten this brand new character design for Gogeta. We get Shintani's design for Gogeta Blue, Super Saiyan, and Base Form, and I really cannot wait to talk about this with you. There are also a lot more designs. We got the expression sheets for a whole load of different characters the other day, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, but I really want to dive in from the ground up with this Gogeta. I kind of want to start with Blue's face because I think it is definitely the most divisive aspect for me. I've spoken time and time again about how, as much as I love Shintani, as much as I love the shapes he uses, his awesome, cool, loose line work, he has a real issue with Dragon Ball feature placement when it comes to where the nose and mouth go. And I think this is one of the most clear examples of that issue. The nose and mouth here are just way too high, and it leads to a sort of scrunched munchkin looking face, and you pull it down by like 5 pixels and it's perfect. It doesn't seem like it actually affects the film in any way, just judging by the clips we've seen, and looking at the expression sheets that I said we'd talk about later and comparing them to what we've seen from the full body shots, the faces tend to be very different and a lot more Toriyama. So I suspect this won't be an issue in the film, but it's definitely interesting to note all the same. What's interesting is that the widow's peak here is way more intense than what we've seen from the full poster and from little clips in the film. In this sheet, he more or less has Vegeta's forehead, and a lot of people are really missing that. I'm not massively interested in little elements like that, but I have to say with something like Gogeta, if you don't have a widow's peak like that, I think you lose that contrast between Goku and Vegeta. I think one of the coolest aspects, and I know this is such a silly thing that fans do, but it is really accurate, where you can split the character in half, and on one side you have Vegeta, and on the other you have Goku. I love that you can do that with this image, but you can't do that with some of the stuff we've seen in the film. Maybe that's just Shida's issue in a couple of the scenes that we've seen, but what's interesting is that we actually have a new shot from Shida in the top right of this image that shows base Gogeta, and he has his proper widow's peak. So I think this is probably not going to be that big of an issue. Looking down the body here, you can see he's got a much more wider neck than a lot of the characters have in this film, which helps people look older and bulkier, and I think that's perfect to what's supposed to be the big, powerful form in this film. Muscle shapes are looking exactly as you'd expect from Shintani, very nice and round. Nothing is segmented, though. It all feels very natural and like it can actually move, and I think what's a really cool example of that is how, if you look at his pec, it's slightly raised on the arm that is raised too. That's the kind of attention to detail and anatomy that often goes unappreciated, and in fact, I almost didn't spot it when it first started. I thought it was just an outright error, but nope, that is paying good attention to anatomy, and I'm really, really impressed by that. Moving on to some other stuff we've got here, we've got the side view of base Gogeta, which looks amazing. I think it's really, really cool to see that Shintani has nailed that Toriyama look. That is something I could see Toriyama drawing today. I wouldn't bat an eye. It looks phenomenal, and I love how relaxed the posture is, even though he stood still, arms crossed, in a very, very solid position. It looks so natural. I know some people have been confused about why some characters have pure black hair and other people have 2 different shades. I would imagine this exists for the same reason that Broly has different colored black hair too. Shintani said that between the action scenes and between the slice of life stuff, details were going to be different, and I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. If the action is ramping up, characters are going to look more detailed, and that extends to the hair here. I really love the way the shading is done, though. It's definitely not overdone. It's just little shadows here and there to give a bit more depth, and I think that works very, very nicely. My favorite of these 3 is probably the Super Saiyan one, which is just perfect. I think that is Shintani at his absolute best as far as the face goes. That is gorgeous. That is perfectly Dragon Ball in each and every way, and the hair looks divine. I love Shintani's hair shapes so much. You know, we've gone for years with very, very similar looking hair shapes, and now we've got that very interesting, I don't really know how to describe it. It kind of reminds me of like a very interesting looking leaf shape coming off, and that's something we saw back in the day in the Buu arc, and so it's very, very cool. And it's here in its own way that it isn't just taking the Buu arc and slapping it on a new design, it's adapting it and making sure it fits with everything else, and I really, really love that. Moving on to some of the expression sheets we got the other day. I don't want to go through each and every single one of them because I think that would just take forever, and it's probably better suited for a more focused video later down the line. But I wanted to highlight very specifically Base Goku's sheet, because to me it is the biggest example of how a character designer can grow into a role over time. I'm sure many of you remember this first shot that Shintani drew. It was his audition piece. It was Goku holding the Nyoibo, and he had a very, very unusual face that really bothered a lot of people. Then, a couple of months later, we got to see the first proper character design, the full body version of Goku, which was significantly improved as far as feature placement went from that original poster, but it still wasn't 100% there. It was still nice, but it was definitely a bit of a deviation from Akira Toriyama. Now we have the expression sheets, the stuff that really matters, because this is what animators use as reference for close-ups, and it is such a drastic improvement. It is so much like Akira Toriyama's manga that I'm honestly blown away. It's also so expressive. I love the curved cheek and the cheeky smile in the bottom left. I love the bottom right, which is a direct reference from the manga. And I love how youthful Goku looks in the top right. It has that nice naive innocence that is just Goku embodied, really. If Shintani sticks around, I think it would be really interesting to see if he goes back and starts updating character sheets to really bring everything in line with what he's learned. With his supervision coming much later down the line after these sheets, I'll be really interested to see if some of this feature placement stuff isn't an issue in the film, whether he learnt that between finishing these sheets and finishing supervision. So that's another little point to look at once we get to the film, and hopefully I will remember to pay attention to that when I actually see the film in Tokyo next week. The next person we got a character sheet for, and someone I'm so glad we got to see because his full body sheet caused a lot of drama. This is of course Frieza. A lot of people were not very happy with the expression that Shintani drew on that three-quarter view. He didn't have his iconic eyes, and he had a very, very unconventional expression. I didn't have many issues with it, but a lot of people did. And so I'm very, very glad that we have these expression sheets because they put all fears to rest. And actually, they also shut up another group of people who were looking at Tate's work in that first Broly trailer and saying, man, Frieza looks strange, he looks really off-model. Actually, if you compare the two, he's 100% on model, and actually, it looks great. The expressions on this sheet are some of my favorites out of every single thing we got. I think the smug Frieza in the bottom left is my spirit animal, and I hope wherever that shows up in the film, it is just the most glorious scene possible. I really love the one just above him as well, the very surprised look with the very large head, and that's definitely a common theme throughout all of these designs, and that's definitely a throwback to the manga. I really, really love the proportions of the face. I think what's also interesting, and I know I hark on Yamamuro so much, and I don't want to because it's really not relevant anymore, he's gone, we have a great designer now, but it's interesting to look at how stock his sheets were in the past, and then comparing them to these new sheets, which not only have a load of real, proper, genuine, interesting expressions, but they're also drawn from lots of different angles, which is a great help for animators to understand how these characters function from different perspectives. I can't explain the discrepancy between the three-quarter view and this new shot, but at the very least, I think we can all safely say now, this looks awesome, and there was nothing to worry about. There were some other sheets we got. We also got the Super Saiyan Blue sheet, which is pretty nice. I really love the top-down perspective of the hair. It's so unusual to see a shot like that, and that is not easy to pull off. So the fact it's on the character sheet is kind of amazing. We also got Super Saiyan God, and we also got Broly. These two are mostly fine, though they do contain some shots that are a little bit questionable. I'm not 100% convinced about Broly's tiny face in one point, but you know, that's probably one of the few negatives I've ever seen. So if that's all we have to complain about so far, well, that is a huge bonus. The film is now a week away. I'm flying off to Tokyo on Monday, and I cannot wait. It's been such a long build-up, and I can't believe it's finally here. It's going to be such a great experience, and I can't wait to bring you guys my big spoiler-free general review, hopefully on day one, followed by a big expansive breakdown of the film's animation, and then possibly, I don't know if I have time for this or maybe whether it's the best idea, but I would also like to do a spoiler-filled breakdown to clarify any of the points I make in the first review. That feels to me like the kind of thing you would do with someone else, so maybe I will wait until I'm home to do that. It really depends on how much time I have in Japan, because really, I want to be there and enjoy the country. I'm not necessarily going to sit in my hotel room editing the entire time. So we'll see what happens. I am meeting some Dragon Ball fans out there, so there's always the possibility that something like that might happen. But either way, that is all I have to say for now. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of these new designs and these new character sheets. Let me know how excited you are for this film. Be sure to rate the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you next time.